So a question I'm often asked is, should I take the ACT or the SAT? Now in truth, they're both pretty similar exams. Both have a grammar section, a reading comprehension section, and a maths section. And if you tend to be very good at one test, you're probably going to be quite good at the other test. And similarly, if you're struggling with one of the exams, it's rarely a case of just switching from the ACT to the SAT or vice versa will be a silver bullet that fixes all your problems. However, there are a few key differences between the two tests that it is quite useful to know. The first thing to note is that the ACT has a dedicated science section. Now, this doesn't have to be as intimidating as it sounds. You do not need to know a lot of actual science to do this test. If you've been doing science at school for 4 to 5 years already, you should know everything you need to do. Not many of the questions rely on outside scientific knowledge. It's more of a data comprehension test. So like reading comprehension, this does the same thing with data. You get a lot of graphs, charts, figures, and experiments, and you have to just read these and learn how to read the data to get the right answer. The SAT does not have a dedicated science section. They've integrated some of these data reading questions into the reading, comprehension, and grammar sections of their test. However, there are way less of them, and so science is less of a big deal in the SAT. So some people like the science section, they find it fine. Others really struggle and they hate it, especially because it is very time pressured. And that brings us to the next difference between the two exams. The ACT is much more of a speed test. It is a very time pressured exam. To give you an example, in the reading comprehension section, to read one passage and answer the questions in the ACT, you would have about 8.5 minutes. For a very similar exercise in the SAT, you'll be given a whole 13 minutes. In the maths section, in the ACT, you have on average 1 minute per question. And in the SAT, this is more like 1.5 minutes over the two maths sections. The trade-off for this, however, is that ACT questions tend to be a lot more direct and obvious, whereas SAT questions can be a bit more oblique and intellectually challenging. In the reading comprehension, for example, you have more time, but you're usually asked to do a bit more critical evaluation and interpretation of the text, whereas in the ACT, it's more like noticing details and spotting the differences between different things. The vocabulary in the SAT tends to be a bit more advanced, and you're asked to make more fine-grained distinctions between the meanings of very similar words, whereas in the ACT, the vocab tends to be a little bit simpler, and the questions comparing word choices are a little bit more straightforward. On the maths front, the ACT has a much larger maths syllabus, there's a lot more to learn, but you tend to only need to understand this on a relatively superficial way. The SAT, however, has a much smaller maths syllabus, so it's quicker and easier to teach, but you do need to understand math at a bit more of an advanced level. You need to get under the bonnet of algebra to really understand how it works for the SAT questions. And so if you struggle with math, and especially algebra, the SAT might not be the test for you. The last thing to think about is where and how you're going to take the test. For example, in the UK right now, the ACT tends to be a computerized test. You take it on a screen, whereas the SAT, although it can be taken in a computerized format, in the UK right now tends to be on paper. Some people prefer on computer, some people prefer it on paper. It's worth trying one of each to get a sense of which one you prefer and which format you would prefer to take the test in. So to recap, the ACT has a science section. It's a much more speed and time pressured test. You usually take it on a computer, but the questions are much more direct, straightforward and obvious, and therefore it's sometimes easier to get a good score once you get used to the time pressure and the format of the exam. The SAT has no dedicated science section. It's slightly less time pressured. You'll tend to take it on paper. However, the questions tend to be a bit more intellectually challenging. The vocab's a bit harder, and your understanding of maths has to be a bit greater. One last thing that can make a difference is whether you get extra time or not. In the UK, if you get extra time for the ACT, you can then take the test on paper, which some people prefer. This relieves the time pressure somewhat for some people, and also you get to take the exam over 2 different days, which again relieves some of the mental pressure of taking one long continuous exam. Extra time can also help for the SAT if you need it. However, it can also turn what's already quite a long exam into a very, very long day. And so that might be one thing that affects your considerations. Probably the best thing you can do is to try a practice test of the SAT and the ACT to get a sense of which one you prefer, because there is just a difference in the tone and quality of the questions that you only really get by experiencing them. I'll put some links below this video so you can find some practice papers and sit down and do some if you wish. However, some people might not want to take an entire practice test of both, as that will obviously take quite a lot of your time. So something I can do to help is I can put together a personalized suite of diagnostic questions for you to take. So you can take some questions from the SAT and the ACT. I can take these in, mark them, and then we can have an introductory trial lesson where we go through your performance on the different tests and see where you want to go from there and discuss which test will be right for you. So if that's something that you feel will be useful for you, please do get in touch. My email address is on this website. I'll be happy to hear from you and help in any way I possibly can. So I hope that's clarified the differences between the tests somewhat. And if you want to get in touch, please do. I'd be very happy to hear from you. Okay, thank you. Goodbye for now.